Welcome back. Well, I finally got to the project I've been hoping to do for the last couple of weeks. And this is a lampshade recovery. And by that, I mean literally recovering the lampshade. When we did the mid-century modern lampshade for the little outdoor barbecue mid-century lamp a couple of weeks ago, it's probably closer to a month ago. The original shade that had been on that lamp was a very poorly matched green gingham, which it was too big for the lamp. It was the wrong style. It's not a style I deal in at all, but it did leave us with a disposable lampshade, a lampshade perfect for reclamation. And so that's what we did today. When we come back, well, let me start by showing you our inspiration piece. And this is something I found recently at Lutz Antiques. The lamp has been sold, so I'm glad I got some film footage of it before it disappeared into the night. Here you go. Okay, so this is our inspiration piece for our lampshade project. We're not going to do anything anywhere near this elaborate, but this is where we got, well, the inspiration. The beaded fringe work, the gathering, and we're going to try to incorporate some of those into our little mini version of this shade. Now that lamp the shade is huge, and it's a floor lamp, so the lamp is huge. The shade is probably about 2 feet across. A lot of elaborate fabric work, bead work, etc. And I wanted to see if we could recapture some of that on a very small scale. And of course, I threw in some parameters. One, this is not going to be a 2-month-long project. I wanted something that could be done in under an hour. That's number one. Also, I wanted something that would cost under $25. And fortunately, I hit it on both counts. So, what I started with was a piece of remnant fabric. I got it online, and it wasn't really a Victorian pattern, but it was great Victorian colors. It's a burgundy and a gold, but it was a leaf print, and the Victorians weren't so big on leaves. That's more of an arts and crafts sort of thing. But since the fabric's going to be gathered and pleated, you're not really going to see the design. You're going to see the colors. So that's what I was counting on. I needed to get some bead trim too, because our Lutz lamp had beaded fringe, and it also had some regular bullion fringe, but the beaded fringe is what sort of screamed Victorian. And it also had that wonderful scallop design along the bottom. Now, since we were not going to take on anything that complex, I went to the beaded fringe to give us that scalloped on the bottom. And that was relatively easy. I think I paid $13 for the beaded fringe. And I don't remember what I paid. The fabric was a remnant, and I did get 2 yards of trim. So I came very close to my price point, and I think it was just under $25 in all. I probably would have done a little better in terms of price if I had just gone to my local fabric store, but I was lazy about it and did it all online. Now, when I am buying things online, not just fabrics, but anything that I want to put together, one of the things I will do is I will grab a copy of the online seller's listing photo of whatever it is they're selling, stick that on my computer, and then when I have whatever I wish to match it with, throw that photo, and then I use photo editing software, and mine is called Photoscape. Free. It's open source software, so it's available at no charge, free download. Throw both pictures in, do a collage which matches them up together so I can see what they're going to look like. So I took the fabric and I took the beaded trim that I wanted, and here's what I came up with. This is my picture. Well, I thought the picture looked pretty good. We could go ahead. I needed some other trims, but you'll see that when you see the project. Fortunately, I was counting on the fact that what you see is not always what you get when you buy online. Colors often turn out a little different. So I got another trim as well. Actually, I got 3 braid trims and 2 different kinds of beads. But again, you'll see that when we get to the project. But I did want to let you know about this part of it, because this part of the project was the most time-consuming and the most involved. It was the planning portion. So, all in all, I was satisfied with it. The amount of time I spent on this project was about twice the amount of time you will see in this video. And the video section is about 15 minutes long. But in between the different segments, I would stop, do 2 minutes worth of work, and then come back. So, whole thing about a half an hour. And I feel overall fairly satisfied with the results. Here you go. This is our project. So this is the shade we are going to convert into a Victorian shade. Now, if you'll notice, this is a fabric covering, and as you can see, the interior of the shade is a very heavy cardboard. Now, the first thing I've done is I have measured around the bottom edge, and that measurement was about 34 inches, so I ordered a yard of fabric. We are going to cut a pattern from this shade, but we're not going to do it the same way we did the last one. We are going to cut a rectangle that will be about 36 inches because we want a little extra. And that 36 inches is going to take care of our 34-inch outline on the bottom. And then we're going to measure up, and I believe this is about 8 inches, so we are probably going to cut a rectangle of about 36 inches by maybe 12 inches. We'd like a couple of inches on either side just for the fudge factor. And that's going to be what we do with our fabric. Now what we're going to do with this, and I've already gotten it started, is we're going to rip off this trim. We've got trim. Let me turn this around. You'll be able to see it better from the front because of the difference in the direction of the patterns. This is just a nice little bit of trim along the edge. Same here, but it has to go because it's raised up and we want a nice flat surface. So let's go over here. We're just going to take that off. I used a sharp blade to get it started, and all I'm going to do is pull it off. both top and bottom. So now this is what our shade looks like without any of the trim. Here's our leftover pile of trim. That's just going to be thrown away. We're not doing anything to this. That's just going to remain. It's possible that we could strip that off, but I wouldn't bet we could have a nice surface underneath. So we're going to leave it as is because it's fairly clean, it's in good condition, and it will be a backing for what we're doing. You will not see this when we are done. So now we're over on the ironing board, and this is the fabric we're using. It has to be pressed. And I'm sure you'll notice right away, this is not a very Victorian print, but that's okay because we're not going to really see the print. What we're going to see is the colors. So, I had to get some trim to match. I started off with this, no good. The colors are all wrong. And then this one, and that one actually looked pretty good when I saw the pictures on the internet, but in person, no way. So, this is the one we're using. It looks a lot better in person, interestingly enough. It really didn't look very good on the internet. And in fact, because of the lighting, it looks a lot darker than the fabric. But without the light from the camera shining on it, it's actually a very good match. And then next up, this is our beaded trim. And this is the one I originally purchased, the first one. And you see the color combination. And I didn't really think that was terrific, although that is red. So, I took a look at this one, which is brown. And I think we may end up going with the brown instead. But we'll take a look once the lampshade is covered and we can put the trim up against it. A lot of this is just letting your eye tell you what the best color matches are. Because even when I do this on the internet, and I'm going to show you how I do this too, when I have just the internet to work from. Internet pictures, everybody's computer shows color a little differently. Everybody's camera captures color a little differently. So what you see isn't always what you get. So we've got some choices here. I have a feeling we're going to go with the brown, but I'm not sure. All right, next step. I will be ironing the creases out of this fabric, then marking my my dimensions. I'll mark the length and width of the fabric, and then we'll do the cutting. All right, so we are marking our fabric. Now I'm making sure to mark starting where the pattern begins and not including this little selvage. I've decided we're good with about 10 inches, so I've marked 10 inches from here up to this line. I've used a yardstick and the tailor's chalk. Because we're marking this on the back side of the fabric, you can use anything you want, really. And the fact is, even if we marked it on the front side, we're probably going to cut this off because, in fact, our line of attachment to the shade will probably be down here somewhere. Yardsticks, by the way, if you don't have them, you can grab them at places like Lowe's and Home Depot. They usually keep a bunch of them in garbage barrels, and they are dirt cheap. So if you don't have one, pick one up. Very handy. And again, we've talked about tailor's chalk. If you do any working with fabric, and let me show it to you from the side. See how thin a line you can get from a little skinny piece of chalk like this? Very inexpensive. I got mine from Amazon, and as I said, even if you find you don't use them, you can always give them to the kids, and you get them in like a very large container, many colors. It's usually a lot more than you're going to need. So, a worthwhile investment because they're just only a few bucks. So, we are still working with the underside of the fabric up, and we have our strip cut. And now we're working with pins and fabric glue. And these are the kind of pins I get. The heads are flat and round. Sometimes they're called daisy head pins. Very easy to grab, no question but that you will be able to tell the side you hold from the side you stick into things quite easily. And I am going to begin attaching the bottom edge to the lampshade with glue, and I'm holding it in place with pins. Now, this is where I'm starting the attachment, and I'm overlapping the seam by about 1/2 inch. Now, I explained this last time we did this. When they originally put the fabric, this was the bottom, and this was the part they brought over the top, folded under, and placed over this piece. That's where we're starting, so that when we come up around the back end, we will be able to butt our fold against this joint very nicely. All I'm going to do is put a thin line of glue and hold it in place with the pins and just go straight around. So once I have the bottom edge glued in place, and you can see it's a little darker down there, that's where the glue is still wet. I did not, in fact, need to pin it in place because the glue does a really good job of holding all by itself, and that surprised me. So now up at the top, I've quartered my fabric. In other words, we have a circle. I pulled the circle taut, put pins in those edges, then lined up the pins and put pins on the other side to divide my circle into quarters. And I did the same thing on the edge of my lampshade. Well, they are there. They're little blue marks with tailor's chalk. And what I'm going to do is pin each quarter in place, and I will show you that when I've got it done. Now, each quarter is pinned in place, and as you can see, I have a huge bunch of leftover fabric. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pleat that fabric into place. And that's the reason I divided it up into quarters, to make sure my pleats were reasonably even, because although you can measure this out, or you can run a line of thread through and gather, I'm just going to do sort of on-the-fly pleats. I'm just going to take a little and a little and a little, which I can do in the small section of a quarter of the lampshade and get it very even, whereas I don't think I could do that if I were dealing with the entire diameter of the top of the shade. Now, once our pleats are all pressed into the glue, I think you can see the little bit of white, which is wet glue still showing through. We're just going to let this set up because we don't want to work with it while it's still really wet, because we don't want to pull our pleats out. So, we're going to come back maybe half an hour, and then we're going to trim this off and apply our glue. And this is the top edge of the shade. The bottom edge is going to be a little more interesting. So we have our trim glued on, and this is the top. And the trick with the trim is to get enough glue on the fabric so that it goes through all the layers of fabric down to the bottom of that cardboard, but not so much that you're making a ghastly mess. At least I always find that a challenge. So, we are done with this, and now we're going to start in on the bottom, and we're going to begin applying the beaded fringe. Okay, now here is our beaded fringe, and I decided to go with the brown. The red was just a little too bright for the dark fabric. Now, this is the part, this ribbon is what we're going to attach to the shade. And the seller very nicely taped off an end for us. I am leaving that tape on, at least temporarily. They do the same thing with trim as well. Now, this trim is actually narrower than this brown ribbon. Now, I could just glue the ribbon on, glue the trim over the ribbon, and not worry about it, because actually it doesn't look that bad. But what I'm going to do is glue the lower half of the ribbon, and then later when that glue sets up, before I add the trim, I'm going to come back and fold the ribbon over probably about 1/3 of the way, and then apply the trim over that. And this again is very easy. You just put a line of glue along the edge of the shade and embed that ribbon into it. Couldn't be easier. So now that the bead trim is applied, I'm just going to fold this over so that it doesn't show above the braid trim. I'm just going to fold it over and glue the braid trim over top of this ribbon. So here we go. This is our finished product, our Victorian lampshade from a remarkably undistinguished looking green gingham shade that I got for free with a lamp. So that's how you do it. Just that simple. Now, if I had wanted to put more time, in other words, if what I was trying to give you was a project that would take a couple of days, would require a bit of skill, we probably could have come up with something even more impressive than that little shade. But this is an introductory project. This is to show you how it's done and the results you can get in half an hour's worth of time. So, obviously, if I were willing to put, say, $40 or $50 into the materials, maybe even like get a shade instead of just this close to picking one out of the trash. I mean, really, that's how close I was with this particular shade. If we wanted to put a little more resources, a little more time, a little more money, a little more effort into it, we certainly could have come up with something even more impressive. But I think for under $25 and half an hour's worth of time, getting a Victorian shade out of that very uninspired little green gingham thing was definitely a win. I would strongly encourage you to give this a try. It's a lot of fun, for one thing. It's a wonderful sort of creative expression. And the truth is, lampshades are tricky. It's extremely hard to find a lampshade you fall in love with. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I look at lampshades and most of the time they are as dull as dishwater, and I am getting something that is sort of the lesser of evils rather than something I really want, I really love. I'm usually just grabbing it because it doesn't offend me too badly. And then I make up for it with lovely finials. By the way, I think that's why I'm such a freak for lamp finials, because the shades out there are so dull, and I want that little trinket on the top. The lamp that is behind me here, that has a little glass shade, those tend to be my favorite kind, because in fact you can get really interesting shades for lamps like that. When you are at, anything from upscale lamp shops right down to Walmart or Target, generally speaking, you are not getting the height of fashion. You're getting whatever they think sells well. So, I don't know. I'm going to have to look at my lamps. Most of my lampshades, well, all of my lampshades do not offend me. I wouldn't buy them if they did offend me. But my shades in terms of my fabric or fiberglass shades, most of them I'm not crazy about. I've only got one I really love. The rest of them, like I say, it's just they did not offend me too much. So I'm going to have to start practicing what I preach, look at my lampshades, and see if I want to redo some of these. And who knows, we may end up getting like a really significant project out of one of those redos. But the project that we looked at today, I hope, will be enough to spark some creativity for you and get you to take a look at your shades and see if maybe recovering them wouldn't be a good idea. Because I know for me, I'm going to have to think about this. I am definitely going to have to see if there's anything I can do with my lampshades to jazz them up a little. All right, so that was our project for today. Oh, before I have to go, I will be right back. I can't believe I almost forgot to do this. Now, let me see where I can get this, where you can see it. There we go. Another birthday present I want to show off. That one was from Colleen, and I have to tell you, first of all, thank you. You so should not have done this. But I was thinking about this afternoon. I got birthday presents from folks I know through YouTube, people I have never met in person in my life. And you know something? I've been married to people who didn't have as good an understanding of my taste. Wow. So, thank you so much, folks. And I did want you to see Colleen's flowers. Also, I wanted Colleen to see them because she sent them through a florist. And as you know, when you send them, like, tell a florist, it's delivered by a local flower shop, you might not even see them. So, I love them. I love flowers in general, but my goodness, this is such a sweet assortment. All right. As you can see, I'm somewhat disorganized today. Anyway, hope you'll bear with me. The disorganization is done. All right, have a terrific week. Definitely look at your lampshades. I know I'm going to be looking at mine. And we will be back Thursday night for our Just Chatting videos. And we will be back next weekend with beds. That was actually a truck, not a motorcycle. Beds we will be back with next weekend because I am going to continue with the bed video I started yesterday because I still have half the information I haven't shared with you yet. All right, have a terrific day, everyone. We are going to look at a happy little slideshow on our way out, and I will see you all.